Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. So, some key things about Revelation 17 and 18 is that the beast is humanity, right? The number of the beast is 666. The beast stands for humanity collectively, the king of humanity collectively, who they're separating from the devil itself. But the king is in submission to the devil. You might call him the prince of hell, what have you. There's 7 heads of the beast, and they coincide with the 7 churches. And their lampstands are Luciferian lampstands with Luciferian lamps. None of the churches are right with God in the end. I've been saying this for years. They all didn't rally and obey God through me. Now, the churches to some degree stand for groupings. They stand for things other than, Catholic, Protestant, this, that, and the other thing. Okay? They stand for ideas that are associated with the regions that they're in. In the Bible, it refers to Philadelphia, not in America, but in biblical times, in the times around the times of Acts, right? In about 70 AD or so, I believe, when Revelation was written by John the Revelator. As the story goes, why he was in prison in Patmos. Okay. All right. So the woman is first Babylon. Okay, well, it's first Eve, and then Babylon, and then Hagar. Okay, why? Because we see in Paul's letters, right? Hagar in this world is the anti-Sarah, right? Hagar is Jerusalem in this world, and she's the anti-Sarah. Woman, the prostitute, folly is unruly woman. Wickedness is first and foremost Eve, right? Eve and the dragon. Even the snake that you can say turns into a dragon, the snake in the garden is a dragon. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. But there's a dragon, there's the whore, there's the 2 beasts. And one of them in particular, she's riding. Okay. So the woman is wickedness, is folly. She's an unruly woman. She's in rebellion, as opposed to someone obeying God through me, a nation obeying God through me, a city, a spirit, what have you. And so Hagar, okay, is the woman in the end. So it goes Eve, Babylon, then Hagar. And they all are kind of Babylon, right? Babylon, before Babylon exists, is embodied in Eve when she deceives Adam and takes the fruit from the snake. And Adam represents humanity, right? Humanity and where it's going. Okay, so people, as they point out in Paul's letters, they're cursed through Adam. Through Adam, they receive the curse. The person born of this world. Okay, he was born in God's image, but he failed to do the right thing. We see it in Egyptian mythology with Horus and Set, where Horus is not of this world, Set is of this world, brute force, not using his head, basic thinking in regards to religion, marriage, martial arts, erotic desire, instead of making love, so on and so forth. So I'm not of this world. Okay, the mark is humanity's number. If you follow the crowd with humanity, you go to hell. So you have the dragon, who is the serpent in the garden, the devil. Okay, the ancient serpent all the way from the garden and before. You have the whore, who is first Eve, then Babylon, then Hagar, which refers to Jerusalem of this world. Okay, you might say the Jews in this world. And then you have the beast, which is, the 8th king is said to be the beast itself, and it belongs to the 7, which coincides with the 7 fallen angels of the churches, the 7 Luciferian lampstands of the churches. Revelation starts with chastising the churches, and it throws you off because at least one of the churches, they don't do a good job chastising them, so you're confused about what it's saying. But what it's saying is that they'll eventually fail. We see in Isaiah 57, the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. Okay, so also when they say the 7 heads, right, they say the 7 kings, 7 heads, there's 10 horns, which are also kings. The 7 heads are also said to be 7 hells, not just 7 kings. Hells has the word L in it for reasons. A play on words for hell, H-E-L-L, connects to H-I-L-L because they worshipped idols on the hills and on the mountains. That's why they say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, they're saying it, not me, fall on us. Okay? Why? Because the mountains are symbolic of the deity they worship on the mountains. It's symbolic of the king who leads the group to worship him, symbolic of the priests, the ways, the paths, symbolic of their grouping. Okay? That's why in Revelation there's a mountain thrown into the sea. But again, you know, I've written this down. I forgot to bring it with me today, and curses on everybody for that. They also set me up to insult America. I insult all nations. That's doing God's work. But they set me up to insult America specifically because when I was looking at the news, when I first got here, I saw, the news on YouTube, as I often do. I saw some kind of anti-woke kind of propaganda from the Pentagon. Again, I'm not woke, right? Pan-Africanism is pan, right? It's Greek. It's Greek societies leading black people behind the scenes, right? It's not something that I'm a part of. They took the idea of following God and they removed the sun from it. So when in Biafra, in Nigeria, when they made their Biafran flag, and if I'm not mistaken, it was after the Pan-African flag was already made, they put the sun in it, where the Pan-African flag doesn't have the sun. Okay. However, Biafra, symbolically, eventually, in terms of an actual physical place, no longer exists here on Earth. Okay, because they didn't manage to take over the country during the Nigerian Civil War, but they managed a victory in principle. Okay. So you see that I'm not a black supremacist. I'm not a Nigerian supremacist. I'm not of this world. My kingdom is not of this world. I'm from above. Everyone else is from below, like it says in John 8. They follow the ways of the devil because their father is the devil, who leads them through their various idols, right? The kings, the hills, the spirits, the ways, the paths, the 7 heads of the beast. Okay, the 7 stars, the 7 churches, the 7 lampstands, 7 abominations fill their hearts, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls, 7 thunders. They're being punished for following the people they're following. It says in Revelation, it's 8 or 9, that they wouldn't repent and they wouldn't stop following false idols. That is the problem. Now, some of you might be confused. Remember, the kings also stand for the deities they're worshiping, right? The king of the Philistines and Dagon, okay, and some of these kings worship Chemosh and Nebo and Baal, okay, over there in Babylon. So when the snake, who's the devil in the garden, is creating demons, right? He's creating demons for them to worship, right? So-called gods. He says to Eve and Adam, right? He says that ye shall be like gods. That you'll be one of these deities that they worship. So humanity has its own kind of deity, which is the deity of humanity. Okay, you could call it Adam. One way or another, it's the king that represents the number of humanity. It's the king of humanity's collective projection. Okay, as they're also led astray by those heads. That's why humanity's collective projection is said to be controlled or to belong to the 7 main deities that they worship. Okay, now some people try to quantify them. I've done it to some degree in the past, right? Dagon, Chemosh, Molech, Baal, Nebo, okay, Asherah, Rephan. One can argue that's the 7. There's different ways to look at it, right? Just like in Greece and Rome and Egypt, at various points they had certain pantheons, and they had the Capitolian triad, okay, where you had Jupiter and his wife Juno, and I believe the third one was Minerva, right? So you had different kind of groupings of deities at times. So the 7 at the time was probably the 7 heads that they're referring to. It doesn't matter. What they really represent are the spirits that are leading humanity, right? In regards to science, in regards to brute force striking, what the gods are gods of, right? Knowledge, okay? Sexual immorality, reproduction, ritual madness, things like this, right? And they kind of are grouped together in groupings. So there's different ways to describe it, but it's all the principles of evil and the particular way that they lead humanity. The people who wrote Revelation, they didn't know exactly how it would play out in the future. And the whole world wasn't exactly dancing to their tune. However, okay, those ideas are like timeless ideas. People come up with ideas in regards to how they should do their art and their science and there's, marriages, and they follow these ideas, these spirits, the spirit of revelry, the spirit of Western marriages, the Eastern marriages, what have you. Thank you.